Good afternoon to our East Coast friends. Good morning to our Pacific friends. We are so glad that you have all joined us today for our second webinar in our summer series, How to Build Processes and Procedures to Support World-Class Hospitality Experiences. In our last session, we learned how to enable and empower your people to delight your customer. Now let's look at how processes and procedures impact your customers. Without those in place, your customer cannot get a good experience. More importantly, they cannot get the world-class experience that we promise them. Today, we are joined by Tony Lopez and Liliana Petrova, our host. I will kick it off to Liliana now, and she will talk a little bit about some scenarios that show the problem that occurs when those processes and procedures you need are not in place. Liliana?
Thank you, Liz, and thank you for having me. And thank you to everyone who chose to be with us for the next 30 minutes. I'm super excited to have Tony with us today. He's a dear friend and a client. So you're going to hear from some real practical information today. I was going to start with the whole importance of process and procedures. But before we go there, I wanted to frame things a little bit. Processes and procedures are essentially part of your operations and your organizational texture. But without a customer experience strategy, they're kind of going nowhere. They're just there. So what we are talking about here is to be really intentional about your processes and procedures. You always will have them. What we're talking about today is how to make this be more intentional. We have seen in our experience two scenarios. In one scenario, there are things you do with your customers, but they're not really focused around their needs. They are things that you are doing because your organization needs these things, but not necessarily because the customer needs them. So in the absence of that focus, the way you interact with your customer is not as frequent as they would like it to be, and or it may not be useful to them. In other words, you're so focused on doing the things that the organization needs that you just forget about their needs. And the result of that is twofold. One, they are kind of forced to reach out to you for the things they need because you didn't proactively give them those things. And you also miss the opportunity to engage and solidify your relationship, right? It becomes an interaction that's missed versus having transactions that are just not connected. The other scenario that you and I and all of us encounter is when there are those processes and procedures that are designed with the customer in mind, but are done poorly and put more effort on the side of the customer. Think of an insurance claim, anything that you do that requires you to do things that probably the agent on the other side can do on your behalf. But because those procedures and processes are driven from bureaucracy or some sort of a legal constraint, they are not really friendly or seamless for the customer. That actually is harder to fix because that means there is some constraint that is hard to overcome. For the women and the mothers in this Zoom call, I personally always talk about this because it drives me bonkers. You know, when you go and you're in the process of labor, they ask you to lay in a bed and tie you to a monitor. That is something that is very questionable in terms of practice, because it really is not as good for the mother that's going to be there for 20 hours potentially. But it is something that the hospital needs because that's why they can be covered to be monitoring the heartbeat of your child. So these are just some examples of where things can go wrong. And the business effect of those things that can go wrong is pretty palpable. Maria, can you flip the page? Yeah. So what you see here are just a couple of stats that I think are reflecting what happens when we really don't care. The $1 billion loss business is pretty impactful. And I think the connection here really is that bad experience is 100% result of process and procedure. Even if you do have a very well-trained staff, If they don't have a process or procedure that allows them to take care of you as a customer, or that are not empowering that person to act on the challenges that are in the moment, that customer experience will be impacted. So keep that in mind. And again, it is one thing I'm just going to finish with is it is a process to fix process and procedures. It is absolutely a journey. It is absolutely something that would take a long time. So when your executives are like, can you do this in 3 months? The answer is no. Yes, you may do it in 6 to 9 months, but in 3 months, the best case scenario is that you have mapped out the problems, but it's not the moment where they're going to see any big turnaround. So that's for me, Liz.
That's an excellent point. Yes. And so to have the impact, right, that comes with the change, let's just take a little bit of a look here at the contrast. Positive experience, with 88% of customers likely to recommend after a very good experience, and 20% higher CSAT scores after having had one of those positive experiences. So we see the business case, the risk of not having these processes and procedures in place, and we see the business case, the benefit of having these processes and procedures in place. And that brings us to our special guest, Tony Lopez.
I just wanted to add something here. When we say positive experience, just to connect this to the emotional state of mind of a customer, right? How a process and procedure creates a positive experience, right? If the process and procedure is done with me in mind, I'm going to have an easy, effortless experience, which in result will make me feel seen and considered, and how things are done with me in mind, and that's going to lead to that positive emotion. So although process and procedures are taught as an engineering piece or something in the background, it actually absolutely connects to the emotional state of mind of a customer post experiencing those processes and procedures.
Right. That's such a great point, right? And that's sort of the meat behind this concept of the world-class experience that we promise. This is how we build them, right? The customer centricity guides us through all of those steps. Thank you for sharing. So Tony Lopez is the Vice President of Manufacturing and Logistics Services for Pride Industries. Headquartered in Sacramento, California, Pride Industries is the largest 501c3 nonprofit agency in the Ability One program. Founded in 1966, Pride Industries has grown to become the nation's leading employer of people with disabilities and those with other barriers to employment, such as veterans and former foster youth. Pride employs individuals in diverse fields, including manufacturing and logistics and facilities management, all made possible by a wide spectrum of support services. As the Vice President of Manufacturing and Logistics Services for Pride Industries, Tony Lopez has developed winning supply chain logistics and manufacturing solutions for over 2 decades, allowing Pride to excel in these industries and operations while developing and crafting an award-winning process that led to awards including Hewlett-Packard's Global Supplier of the Year for managing 3PL services supporting North and South America. Tony has more than 25 years experience in operations and is APICS CPIM certified. And he is our special guest here to talk about how processes and procedures help us build world-class, customer-centered hospitality experiences and what impact that has had on his brand. Tony? Oh, let's make sure. There you go. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll start with just a quick question to you. And that is, what is an example that you have seen of a procedure or process that empowers your employees to act out hospitality standards or this idea of customer centricity?
Yeah, let me first start with saying thank you and honored to be here today. So thank you so much for the invite. I would like to first start and share that my idea of enhancing the customer experience was really focused, I thought, on those interactions and direct support of our customer. It really wasn't until Liliana shared with me her iceberg visual, and I use that all the time. That iceberg visual, you've probably seen that before, where there's a piece of the ice that's above the water and a larger piece that's below it. Now, while the top side is customer facing and truly, truly important, all that stuff under the waterline, the stuff behind the scenes that you don't see, is equally. And so it wasn't really until that was pushed forth by Liliana did I really understand that. So again, thank you so much for sharing that. I think an example I would give you is we have a group previously titled account managers, and through the efforts of Liliana, we rebranded them to now call them customer success managers. They are charged with interacting with their customers, supporting their business throughout the entire organization. And this engagement we had with Liliana, we were really able to look at things and make them more consistent. We created what we called a playbook. This playbook outlined all the necessary touch points throughout the entire customer journey, from quoting, estimating, all the way through from processing throughout our operation. The playbook really helped us crystallize how we want to communicate, how we want to support and invest in our relationship with our customer. And that's really what this is all about. I think that is a great example and exemplifies the procedure concept that we're talking about here today. And it really allowed our team to be more customer centric than we had been previously.
Excellent, excellent. And what impact overall do you think that has on your customer experience?
Yeah, great question. So anybody can be transactional and meet the needs of a documented customer scope of work. We want to meet the needs of our customer and be more strategic. And that requires true investment into this relationship. So those investment moments came through with this customer experience. And that is the differentiation we wanted to establish with this partnership with the Petrova Experience. And sometimes these moments also happen when we look to dazzle and delight our customers. I'd like to share real quickly. We have a general manager of our electronics manufacturing division. He and his team got invited to a customer supplier appreciation event. And they asked the people, please dress up. We want to have fun. And so of the 100+ people that showed up, only a handful dressed up. And our GM was one of them. This caught the attention of their senior vice president, who then engaged in a conversation. That resulted in a site visit. And that senior vice president had not been to our facility in over 8 years. So this was a big testament of him engaging, showing up differently, trying to connect with our customer. And then once they were out here, they start talking about business, how our performance is today, what other things that they're working on and focused on. And we were able to, out of that conversation with them on site, get a couple new RFQs that we're actively looking at today.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's really putting this all into practice. I like that you mentioned employees too. What impact does all this have on employee experience overall through that story and maybe some others?
I think employees get energized, excited that they're really servicing the customer at a different level. That same example I gave you before when the customer was on site. We have a saying that if we bring out a customer or an honest, honored guest, we'll go ahead and roll out the red carpet. And in this actual case, with bringing that SVP and her team on site, we actually did that. We had our employees create a red carpet. They put stars on the red carpet. And so as they entered the conference room, they got to see their names on each one of the stars and walk across that carpet. The smiles on the faces of the customer was truly equal to that of our employees that took the time to create that special customer moment. So that would be a great example of how our employees see the evolution of engagement with the customer and going kind of one step beyond to support them.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And it sounds like that can only come about with leadership that's aligned on all of these ideas, on the customer centricity, the processes being there for them to support that. As a leader, what do you see as the value of connecting customer experience with the processes and procedures for your teams and for your own, for your brand as a whole? What's the key there to linking those things?
Yeah, so I think before I answer that, if I could take a brief moment to share kind of my experience of my role as a leader in this engagement with the Petrova Experience. Simply put, it was hard. In all seriousness, our organization asked me and our line of business to pilot this, and I was happy to do so. This was a big initiative. This is something we've been talking about for several years. So I wanted to make sure we put forth the effort to make it successful. And so my role in this engagement was really a communication champion for the initiative and a support member to my team. So what that meant is at the onset, I had to partner with Liliana in order to collaboratively design what success looks like. And if you've not worked with Liliana before, she is definitely a force to be reckoned with. And it's great because we were able to have our fair share of very authentic conversations, trying to figure out how to get through it. And that was really needed in order to develop trust between one another to be ultimately successful in our endeavor. So, and this level of commitment and leadership on my side was balanced by the passion and hospitality experience on Liliana's side. And that together really allowed our manufacturing and logistics team to deliver and enhance our experience to all of our valued customers. So for that, Liliana, I truly appreciate the partnership and allowing us to get there.
And I wanted to thank you for sharing this. And I think that's the one thing I would say to the group here attending, that I didn't realize as much. Afterwards, I realized that processes and procedures are actually as personal as you can get with a customer. It's, when you do training, it's one thing, it's a little easier. That's why most people are kind of shying away from going into the process and procedures. Technology also is a little easier because then you're designing something, but it's like a thing that's different. Process and procedures and making them different means somebody actually lets you in and is vulnerable to let you talk about it and being open to discussing this. But that's why, for me, this is the most impactful part of the trifecta of customer experience redesign. It really changes the experience permanently. But for that impact, you also need to have a very strong partnership. And I wanted to make sure you hear that today. That's why we added this to the content.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
So I would like to now answer the question that you posed. I think the customer experience strategy and process and procedure enhancement really go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. The byproduct here is you get to optimize your operating performance, and that ultimately translates into improved customer outcomes. So those type of repeated experiences over time solidify customer loyalty and eventually move you up the ladder to have a customer customer evangelism, right?
Yeah.
That is where your customer goes out and tells other potential customers how great you are. And it's that highest pinnacle level of customer experience. That's where your brand is bragged about. And that's where you get more visibility in the markets that you serve. So there is an absolute translation to brand awareness through an experience like this. And you've got great testimonials that your customers are able to share. And the byproduct is you get more work out of it.
That's wonderful. Let's stay on that idea just a little bit longer and maybe talk more about impact, right? In addition to what you're saying, or to kind of codify what you're saying. You worked with Liliana and the Petrova Experience on these approaches we were just discussing. What kind of KPIs are you using to gauge the impact of your CX?
So most organizations have some level of key performance indicators in place. We absolutely did, but I would share with you that maybe not actively nor consistently managed to them. And I think through this engagement, and then also a partnership with our internal, we call them our business analytics team, we created a universal customer health scorecard. And that scorecard has all the pertinent metrics that we want to manage our business, and it's monitored by leadership. We also incorporated, this one was really big for us, a customer communication turnaround time, which we had not really intentionally focused on previously. And not because it's not important to us, but rather we just didn't have a good way to do it. And Liliana had this great idea and said, well, what if we created a ticketing system where we could record all inbound customer inquiries and track the responses on that turnaround time? So we engaged in that conversation with our IT team. It is currently in development, almost done. So now we're not only able to track the turnaround time, but it brings complete visibility to management for all emails across their entire customer portfolio into a single tool, where before everything's buried in somebody's individual email inbox, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't have that visibility. You don't understand where they might need support. So now we have the opportunity to respond, have a goal that we're all striving towards, and a tool, a systematic technology stack that we can use to make us even more successful to our customers.
Excellent. And how are your numbers looking?
So far, we're on the right track. We're definitely trending in the right direction. Our team is developing a regular cadence of how they collect the data, how they review it, which is great. Two examples I would give you is we have seen a significant improvement in our quoting turnaround time with this effort. Same thing with on-time delivery performance. Both of those were called out by Pride's customers when we went through our customer intake interviews with Liliana and her team. So that was great to see that we were able to figure out a way to become better in serving our customer and actually listen to them. And so they really appreciated that. We still have a lot of work to do. There's still some open items, and we're definitely moving forward to getting those accomplished. But I would tell you that certainly there has been immense value and benefit in partnering with Liliana and the Petrova Experience. I am truly so appreciative of all the time spent, the attention given, and the industry knowledge that Liliana has dropped on us. And it didn't hurt that we got a chance to hang out and eat dinner and drink some wine.
Even better.
Even better.
Those who know me know that wine is always part of the experience.
World class.
World class wine, not just any wine.
That's right. That is fantastic. Tony, thank you so much for sharing all of that. That's really helpful for everyone on the call, I'm sure. We're going to shift in now to a little bit of a Q&A. We have some questions that have come in, and we just want to get a read from both of you, both Liliana and Tony, your thoughts on some of the questions that we're receiving. And for our attendees, please feel free to go ahead and type in the chat any questions that you have for either or both of our speakers today. The first question talks about organization size and budget. So regardless of an organization's size or budget, what would you say is the most important process that needs to be established in order to deliver on customer experience promises? It's a great question.
All right, Tony, I'll let you think. I'll take a stab. It's this one, I can go many places, but for some reason, can you repeat it again?
Yeah, of course. So what they're asking here is, regardless of the organization's size or budget, what would you say is the most important process that needs to be established to deliver experience promises?
I'm curious to see where Tony will go, but for me, I actually will go back to the ops and the operation, because to me, the promise is the basic delivery of the experience. And if you don't have that, nothing else matters. So the basics matter, type of thing, like meeting the promise. So to me, the most important process is to make sure you control that you measure it and that you report it, so that you make sure that really takes place consistently and regularly, and that you don't miss a beat there. That's, to me, is the most important one. And I think, again, people don't think that's customer experience, but it really is. It's the accountability piece of it.
Yes.
Tony?
I'm probably going to start at 30,000 feet. I think I don't know if it's loosely called a process, but strategic initiatives and design is where it all starts. If you don't have commitment and buy-in from executive leadership, this is not going to be a successful outcome. And so every year we come together and we have a process at which we look at what initiatives we want to focus on and why. And this one was on the list for a while, but then became critically important. And not because we were suffering customer service, we just wanted to make sure there was a better differentiation between us and our competitive market. We are very much customer centric anyway as an organization. We just want to become better. And so I would say if it needs to start at the top, that process, that strategy conversation, that design effort, and then from there it's carried down throughout the organization. If you can't get that to happen, it won't be successful. And what I could share with you from a personal experience, it was great because we had a couple new executives that came into the fold, but they all echoed the same thing. They were very passionate about how do we serve our customer? That's got to be a focus of ours. How do we deliver better service? And so all of them said, in addition to supporting our CEO, that this has to be one of the critical few this coming year. So if you don't have that level of a discussion and that process isn't fully vetted at the top, it's very hard to see the benefits downstream and ultimately impacting your customer in a positive way.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. You mentioned starting at the top, right? We have another question about what it's like for leaders managing their employees through this process. This question says, how difficult has it been to get the rest of employees to embrace new procedures consistently and without resistance to change?
So our current CEO and president and our previous president and CEO would say the same thing. The only groups that like change are vending machines and babies. This was a change management effort. It was huge for the organization. And so I intentionally used the word communication champion earlier to answer one of your questions. That's where it starts. It's the constant reminder of why we're doing this, the benefits, and the needed engagement from all. And I will share with you, it was hard to begin with. Our company, this is one of the very first projects that I've been a part of where it was moving so fast and we had so many things we wanted to do that it was hard to kind of keep everybody rallied around it without getting, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. So we did have those moments where we had to pause, we had to slow down to speed up, have those conversations, whether it was myself individually, whether it was Liliana and myself partnering through it. It was a challenge, but I think a couple goes at it, a couple at bats, the team started rallying behind it. They understood it and they saw that, hey, Tony's here, senior leadership's here to echo that we're going down the right path for the right reasons. And the only way we're going to get there is with your support and your help.
Yes, that's so good. I love that. The communications champion, slowing down to speed up. And your consistent presence. That's really fantastic.
Another piece I would just add, I know we are out of time, but I wanted to just add is that if you involve them in the co-creation, that also helps. So it's not just telling them, but it's taking the extra time, and maybe that means it's slower, more logistics, but it always pays off.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, that goes right into our next question, and this will be our last. We'll get back to some people who we weren't able to respond to via email, but this question is, how do you maintain these world-class customer-centric experiences over time?
The process and procedures certainly are a big help, right? You have to document and make sure you have that in place. But I think it's making sure that there's this culture shift. It's a constant reminder that this is important to the organization. A great example is in certain meetings that we have now, we talk about specifically customer experience. What does that mean? We've got dedicated customer experience meetings looking at certain metrics, having different conversations that we've had previously. So it's right there in everybody's face. So those documented procedures help. Thank you again, Liliana, for bringing some of these new tools to us and new thoughts to engage our customers. But really, it's process and procedure, and it's change of culture and climate within the organization and leadership's commitment to continue down the path.
And then the last piece I was mentioning is KPIs in HR metrics. We're not there yet, but yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you all so much. And thank you to everyone who submitted your questions. That was a great addition to our conversation. Liliana, I believe, has an offer for us. Would you like to talk a little bit about that in our last moments?
Yeah, okay. We have 30 seconds. I'll tell you, my birthday was last week. I was in Paris, and this is the first time we're doing something like this. So I may butcher how I talk about this, but it is something we're trying out. And it is a very much a special offer to dig into some of your process and procedures. So I promise it will not be too invasive. However, without letting us in, we probably can't give you any tips either. So for the first 7 that reach out to me, we will do this for free, and we will give you this at least starting point where you can look at and how you can improve your experience internally. And I hope that, you engage with us to see how you can improve your customer experience.
Wonderful. And we'll share some more details with you all in our thank you email. With that, I want to thank you all so much for joining us today for our webinar, and to invite you to our next webinar, where we will look at technology innovations for hospitality. Thank you so much to Tony Lopez for joining us today. And thanks always to Liliana Petrova for her guidance.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Bye. Have a good
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.